Hello, thank you for joining us today. My name is Corey Gibson. I am a solutions engineer with Skillable. Today we will be covering performance-based testing and activity-based assessments. Generally, when we talk about PBT and ABA, or performance-based testing and activity-based assessments, you'll see two main differences between the two. Activity-based assessments are generally not scored, and they help the learning institution understand where their learners are struggling and where they're excelling, and they also help the learner understand what they are doing well and what they may need a little bit more focus on. Whereas performance-based testing typically offers no guidance. Each individual item is scored or has some sort of score that'll be applied to a final pass or fail. And it validates the learner's ability to do that particular task or topic of tasks. So why performance-based testing? Performance-based testing helps you ensure proper metrics to verify learners are learning the correct information, and it also provides a standard of testing against that information. So all learners, no matter where they're at in the world, are tested at the same standard with the same practices applied. Another thing that you can do is you can verify real-world skills and knowledge. You can use performance-based tests to validate and prove skills that your learners have with your training. You can also create your own certification and reward systems with performance-based tests because you have something defensible that you can say, look, my learner was tested against these actual standards, and they met those standards across the board. Now that we've gone over performance-based testing and the differences between performance-based tests and activity-based assessments, let's jump into a lab and see what it looks like. And then we'll dissect that lab and show you how, with the Skillable Studio, you can create activity-based assessments and how easy it is to bring your labs from an activity-based assessed type lab to a performance-based test. Here we have a very simple lab that we have put together that's got a couple of questions in it. And one question, it's got a question and then it's got an activity. And so one question is multiple choice, and it will do a simple yes or no on that, whether the learner gets it right or wrong. And the other one is what we call an automated activity. So it's actually a scripted assessment of whether the user did what they were asked to do correctly. So starting the lab off, we are asked to log in. This user is already logged in. And our first task is to create a folder. And it gives us some parameters. So it wants us to create this folder in our C drive. So I'll check this just to show that this is an actual scripted event and that it's live scripting every time the lab is launched. You'll get this actual performance metric. And in this case, because I have not created this folder in our C drive, I failed the assessment. Something to note here is that you can also control the amount of times the user is allowed to retry this specific task or not. So if we're talking in this scenario about an activity-based assessment, it's typically lower stakes. And so we would typically allow the user a bunch of chances just to retry it as many times as they want till they get it right. We might even be able to build in some feedback when they get it wrong, to maybe add an additional set of instructions that helps them figure out how to get it right, or helps them with some step-by-step guidance to help them get it right. But in this case, I'm just going to try one more time and hope that I get it right. I'm going to create this data folder. We see that it is actually in the C drive, and so we'll check against this one more time. Something else that's keen to know about our scoring system is that you can also customize what this button says. You can customize the text that comes around the button. You can also customize the output. In this case, I just have a simple give me a green if it's good, give me a red if it's not. But you can customize all of this to really tailor the experience to the learner and to your brand and what you would like to put across. Okay, so we have gotten this right. So we did not make the folder, we failed, we made the folder, we got it right. That's awesome. Now let's move on to our multiple choice questions. Our multiple choice questions are another addition that you can use in your testing process. And you can do multiple choice questions that ask a question and provide one multiple single answer solution, or it could be multiple choice multiple answer, or it could be a short string with an exact match, like if I were to have to type out Windows 10. Or it could be a short string with like a regex match. Let's say you asked a question that probably required maybe a sentence or two to answer and you only need a couple keywords. You can regex match all of their potential answers. So in this case, again, multiple choice, single answer. What operating system is in the virtual machine we're working in? We're going to guess at Windows 10, and we got it correct. Now, when the user ends an activity-based assessment type lab, if you notice, they'll just end it. The lab ends, and that's all there is to it. There's no more. Let's jump into the back side of this and show you how to create a performance-based test out of this exact same lab. So from our lab page, in Skillable Studio, from the lab profile page, if we come over to edit instructions, we see our instructions here with our two activities. We're going to come up to the circle with the lightning bolt in the middle of it. That is our activities icon. We're going to open this up, and we're going to notice here that we've got the activity, the automated activity of checking to see if that folder's there. And then we've got the multiple choice question. Along with editing these, to enable these to be scored, we simply have to check this box right here. Now notice when I made this, that this warning came up. There are no scored activities included in the instructions. If you are moving something from an activity-based assessment to something scored, you will have to come into each activity that's here that you want scored. You'll have to edit it and add a score that's supposed to apply to this. So let's do that now. We're going to click Edit. We'll come in here, and we notice that there's a box up here. We just simply need to click the scored box, come down. For our automated activities that have scripts, the score value is going to be on the script. So we simply need to change this to represent, we've got two questions, so in order to get 100, we'd have to have a score value of 50. Now you can have whatever score value you want here. I'll show you in a minute where it's important and how it all works. Now, we can also take away the on-demand evaluation, so this will take away the buttons. And we're going to do that now to simulate something that's more certification-based. So we're going to take away those buttons, and if you notice, all it's going to do is score it, and it's going to show the results in a report after we are done. So I'm going to save this now, and we'll do the same to the question, and we'll make sure that we take away the on-demand feature, and we will we'll make it scored. And then if you notice the question, when we click score, the score value shows up underneath the box. That's because this is a question, it's not automated. So let's do this actually. The multiple choice question will be worth 30. We'll come back into the scripted and make it worth 70. And then we'll save this. And if you notice up here, it'll say passing score. You get to set what the score has to be in order for them to pass. In this case, we're going to leave it at 70, so they have to at least get this right in this case. Now we'll close this. We'll make sure that we saved. We'll close that, and we'll launch this lab again. All right, through the magic of editing, we've launched our lab. And a couple of things I wanted to point out before we actually pull up the lab is that when we made our changes and we decided to create the lab, or create a scored lab out of this, you'll notice that this went from lab profile to exam item. And you get this check mark over here. Now we'll pull up our lab and give it a look now and see what looks different. So I've already logged in. And if you notice, our blue buttons are now gone. So now we're just going to, like an exam, we're going to take this and we're going to answer the questions and do the tasks it asks, and then we're going to have it submit for grading. So we're going to create that data folder under here, and oops, let's delete that, and then we'll just rename this folder data. Make sure it's saved. Good to go. Let's move on to our next. For the sake of just seeing that you can get stuff wrong and stuff like that, I'm going to answer this wrong. It's clearly Windows 10, but I'm going to answer Ubuntu because I'm unsure. And then I'm going to submit this for grading. Understand the student's experience will be just like that. It'll ask them if they're sure they want to submit this for grading, so they can always have a chance to say no, not yet, and come back to the lab. In this case, we're going to submit it for grading. And while that's grading, we'll minimize that and come back to our lab profile or exam item page. And understand that it will give them a result based on their performance. So it says, congratulations, you passed. Your score is 70 out of 100. They'll be able to close. Now, as the administrator on the platform, you're able to pull up exam results here and by the lab instance. So let's look at both of those. If we click lab, find exam results on the exam item page, we can come over here and we can look at the lab instances that were executed, and we can look at the details. If you notice there's a passing score, you can, at a glance, you can see who it was, the lab profile, the series it belonged to, the date, the time, and the status. So complete is important, the exam, whether it was passed or not, and the score that they got, and then the passing score for the entire exam. If you need a deeper dive, you can click on details, which will bring you to the lab instance page. It gives you a little bit more user information and some of the stuff that they had to do, and then it also gives you the activities, and it will show you if they got it right. And then for questions, it will also show you the question that they answered versus what the right answer is and the score they got for that. Now that we've gone over how to successfully create a lab with activity-based assessments, and then create a lab that's a performance-based test, possibly out of those labs that have the activity-based assessments in them, you should now be fully equipped to create your own performance-based tests. I hope you learned something today. I hope we had a little bit of fun. I hope you get to take this to your organization and your development environment and play around with some of this stuff. If you have any questions, please reach out to us. Thank you again for joining us today. My name is Corey Gibson. It's my pleasure to help you learn a little bit more about performance-based testing.